The next crust I'd like to show you is pate sucree. Sucree is French for sugar. And as the name implies, there is sugar in this dough. We're going to use it to make a crust. We've got the egg yolks. We've got the cream in there as well. That's our liquid. That's got some acid in it, and that's going to give us a nice shortbread texture that's kind of sweet, sort of crumbly. It's very appropriate for fruit tarts and things like that. It's not appropriate for savory or some of the other pies or constructions that pate brise was able to go both ways on. This is much more of a crumbly textured crust. So that being said, let's show you how to make it. We start out with our flour again, and we're going to mix our other dried ingredients in there, our salt and our sugar. And before I add my liquids and butter, I want to make sure this is nicely combined. Now, same thing with my butter as in the brise. I want to sort of crumble that up and get it broken into little pieces before I start working it with my hands. You can see we have a nice amount of butter in there. That's going to give it a nice buttery flavor. And now I'm just going to start working it with my hands. And what I'm looking for is that mealy, crumbly, oatmeal-like texture, just like when we were making the pate brise. And you can see now that that's fairly well incorporated. That nice, sandy oatmeal texture is there, and I'm ready for my liquids. Now I'm going to add the cream to my egg yolk. I'm going to give it a little bit of a whisk there to incorporate it together. That way I don't have little bits of yolk or white or streaks of cream floating in my crust. I'm going to drizzle this in there. Make sure I get all of it. Use my spatula, my fork, mix that around so that starts to come together a little bit. And then I'll go back in there with my hand and we'll turn it out onto my work surface here. Now again, that extra acid from the cream and the egg yolk is going to make it nice and elastic and easy to work with and rolled out, not as fussy as the classic pastry crust. The other thing that acid is going to do is prevent gluten from forming. Those offensive gluey strands, no good. That's going to make for a tough crust. So the protein actually helps that, keeps it nice and tender. And that's what we want, is a tender, buttery, shortbread, almost cookie-style crust. And that's what pate sucree does. And you see it took all the dough out of that pan, bowl there. And now, as I bring it together here, you can see it's still sort of crumbly and coarse. And just like with the brise, I'm going to work this away from me and fold in the edges with the heel of my hand. And as I do that, you can see it's starting to become more elastic in texture. See that come together? That butter gets soft. Now look at that, a nice uniform dough with none of that crumbly texture that it had before. It's nicely elastic, which means it's going to be firm enough to hold together. And there is our finished product. Now I'm just going to wrap that in a little bit of plastic and let it relax in the refrigerator for about an hour or two. Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Perfect timing. If you'll put that in the refrigerator. And here's a disc of the same dough, the pate sucree, rolled out, free form, and I'm going to make a pear galette, which historically is the first tart that was ever made. It's free form, it doesn't require any pan at all, and one that I love to make with kids. Now, here is my caramelized pear mixture that I've thrown my currants in, that I plumped in rum. These are already cooked. And I'm just going to mound this in the center, and you'll see how easy this is because all the fillings can be done ahead of time. You can do this with absolutely anything can go in here as long as it's not soupy or custardy. And I want to make sure that I arrange this evenly to an even depth. And I'm going to finish this with some almonds on the top there that'll roast up. And all I'm going to do is bring the sides of the galette up, pleating the edges as I go. And so there I have formed my pear galette, or free-form tart. And all I'm going to do is very carefully get my fingers underneath there. And into a 350-degree oven for about 30-35 minutes.